Bonjour, and today we're covering the prepositions in French. The other day I heard someone say that French people drink a lot of wine. I thought to myself, this is such a stereotype. In this video, we're gonna cover quite a bunch of prepositions, so hang in there. I hope everything will be clear the first time around so that the second time it sinks a bit deeper in your brain. Enough rambling. I give you the prepositions in French. What is a preposition is a good question. It's a word governing and usually preceding a noun or pronoun and expressing a relation to another word or element in the clause. Can be used in 5 different situations here. When you say that you're going to be somewhere at 12, you'll be there à 12 heures, ou à midi, ou à minuit, depending on the time of day. Also, a place in London, à Londres. And watch out with this one, because here we're talking about cities, and you're gonna use à before a city, but not before a country. Cities, we use à. Bénéficiaire, when you give something to someone, well, you're gonna use à in French. You're gonna give something à John. Je donne un verre de vin, une bouteille de vin à John, to John. It's also used in case of something within something. For example, une boîte à outils. And it tells us what is in the box. A toolbox is une boîte à outils. It's very specific, that case, but you'll find it now and then. It's also a price. Something that costs 35,488 euros is going to be à 35 488 euros. We covered 5 different types of uses for the first preposition in French, one that I really like, one that introduces a COI, or different kind of information here. That's the first one. The second one is de. That one is a bit more complex. Some verbs must have de that follows the verb, but in this case we're going to have the in many other situations. In the case of possession, for example, it's Oliver's robot. C'est le robot d'Olivier. See, Oliver, of course, is placed somewhere else in the sentence here. Agent. When you create a passive sentence in French, in English you're going to use by. Lions are feared by all. But in French you can use de in that case. Les lions sont craints de tous. And what we call here is a complément d'agent. Complément d'agent allow us to create passive sentences in French, but in the meantime, remember that de is going to be connected to that topic of creating passive sentences in French. Matière. Un bloc d'acier. A block of steel. Un bloc d'acier. It tells us what the block is made of. Origine, le café de Colombie. Coffee from Colombia. De, from in this case. Many different kind of translations from English to French. So far we've covered the S, the apostrophe S, we've covered by, of, from. It's 4 different kind of prepositions in English, all translating to de in French. Finally, we have contenu, the content. Une assiette d'escargot. When you have a plate of snails in front of you, it's une assiette d'escargot, signaling that the content of the assiette of the plate is snails. Okay, 2. We've already covered 2. Now the third one, and there is total 7. So it's a magical number. We're almost halfway through. We're going to use it in case of when you describe the texture of something. When something is made of silk, like a piece of fabric, you can say it's en soie. Location, en Egypt. And I told you earlier that in case of cities, you're going to say, I am in Paris. You're going to say, je suis à Paris. But in that case, en is the preposition to use in case of certain countries, not all. Other countries are going to take au. And we'll have a special conversation about that, but not in this video. I just want you to keep in mind that French is not that complex. It's just that it's all about focusing on small details and then studying that, studying the exceptions, studying the exceptions to the exceptions, and then you're good to go with the grammar. Transport, and I don't want to make it sound too harsh. It's not that complex. It's a bit complex. This is why French people drink wine, but it's a stereotype. Actually, they do not drink that much wine. And I don't really understand why people say that. Finally, it's not finally, we're halfway through. We have means of transportation. When you're traveling by car, you can say je voyage en voiture. You could also say by plane, en avion. You could also say by ship, en bateau. Transport, en. Gérondif. When you say laughing, I entered the room. Je suis rentré dans la pièce en rigolant. And you link that with a present participle in French to create the gérondif. And it's good to know. It's a preposition that works to create this mode, this impersonal mode of the French language, le gérondif. The length, en une heure. When you do something in an hour, and I'm not talking like dans une heure, I'm not talking something that will happen in an hour, translates into the same thing, like much later in an hour. No, here we're talking en une heure, something that was done in an hour. In that case, we use a different preposition in French, which is handy. It really helps clarify if we're talking about something that will happen in an hour or something that took an hour to do or to complete. Then we have sur and sur. We can use that as simply a way to locate something, like when you have a gold bar, you're holding a gold bar in your hand. Well, anything on the gold bar, we'll translate that sur le lingot d'or. Sur le lingot, on the gold bar is sur le lingot, il y a un lagotin. Un lagotin is an ingot. It's a smaller gold bar. And we can also say, and it's less common, elle va sur ses 20 ans. When someone is nearly 20 years old, you're going to say elle va sur ses 20 ans. It's kind of poetic. She's going on her 20s. And this is a special case, of course. It's not very commonly used, but it's good to know. And then, almost there, we're at preposition number 5 out of 7 of this video. Par. A means, in this case, the first one. Un colis livré par avion. A parcel delivered by plane. And as a rule of thumb, you can keep in mind that par can replace or translate by. Generally, it's either by or per person, and we're coming to that one in a minute, in a second. But it will be par or by in general. So that one is kind of easy. Une tâche effectuée par John. A task done by John. Distribution. When you distribute things like bread, and or gold bars, or ingots in that case, un lagotin par personne. You give gold bars to people, going un lagotin per person. It will translate to par. It's very close to the French translation. Itinéraire, when you have an itinerary, you can say that you went through street X to go somewhere. It's going to be passer par la rue X pour aller quelque part, through. And through translates to many different things in French, but in that case, we're focusing on par. And here, dans, number 6, you already know dans is probably one of the first words that you learned in French, translates to in, dans la ville, in the city, dans une heure, in an hour, it's a future time, dans une heure. And last but not least, pour, which usually is very easy to translate because here you're going to see that every time we translate pour for, with for in English. In the case of a price, an object sold for 10 euros, it will be un objet vendu pour 10 euros. And you cannot say, in that case, an object sold at 10 euros. You cannot say un objet vendu à 10 euros. Vendu pour 10 euros. Let's be correct. Destination. Partir pour Kuala Lumpur. To leave for Kuala Lumpur. Very easy to translate. Un but, and here, watch out. I wrote this in French, and sometimes I write most of the texts that you'll see besides examples and sample sentences will be written in English. But here, all that middle column, everything in that middle column was written in French. So I'm not writing but in English, but I'm writing but, which is a goal. Un but, a goal. And when you say he works for fun, il travaille pour le plaisir en français. And now it's the last one, the very last one of this lesson. I can see that you've been attentive so far, which I think is amazing because you could be doing so many other things right now of lesser value than strengthening your French grammar, that I really appreciate the investment in time learning something like the French grammar. Durée future. To leave for a week. Partir pour une semaine. And I've had problems I've had problems with students with whom we were in that conversation where the student wanted to know in what cases to use pour, because he thought that pour could be used in many different kind of situations, and in that case is going to be a time span but in the future. So if you say like yesterday I stayed home for 2 hours, well, in French you cannot say je suis resté à la maison pour 2 heures because it's in the past. You got to consider the future in the case of that preposition. Partir pour une semaine. I'm leaving for a week, but it's in the future. And in that case, it's going to be pour. Otherwise, if you say like I stayed home for 2 hours, je suis resté à la maison pendant 2 heures. You're going to say pendant instead of pour. And we didn't cover pendant in this lesson because we're covering here the most important prepositions. It's really a question of dusting whatever dust might have accumulated in your French over the years, if you've learned for some time, or just discovering what the most important prepositions are in French. And this is what we've covered in this lesson. So let's sum it up now. We have 7 major prepositions in French, which are à, de, en, sur, par, dans, pour. And it will be a great idea now to just test how much you've understood out of this lesson, how much information you could retain over the course of like a bunch of minutes by clicking the link below the video and trying to complete the exercise. You'll find all the theory that I presented in this video on the website. And well, I suggest you give it a shot right now just to see how much you already know. And if it just so happens that the test is a nightmare and most of the answers, or all the answers, worst of the worst, all the answers are wrong, in that case, well, you can just, I suggest you watch the video again and just let it sink in. It'll take maybe a bunch of days to really sink in and to really accept all the tenses, all the examples in which you can use those prepositions. And that's all for this video. Thank you for your attention. I'll see you in another one, and bye for now.